Hi there, I'm Sarah Burgess and welcome to this week's 1080 Career Insights. And today I am joined by career coaches Gill and Liz, and we're going to be talking about planned career breaks. So as always, please do like, comment and ask questions throughout the session just so that we can make it as interactive and useful as possible. So we are going to be talking just a little bit about planned breaks that either just happened or things that you did specifically plan. So it's kind of a mixture of the two things really. So maybe you found yourself in a break that you hadn't planned and then just going how to make that a bit more purposeful. So we're going to start with the first question to Gill, which is what kind of things should you be considering if you do want to take a break?
So I think really whether the plan, if it's one that you planned and decided on, or whether it's sort of happened to you through a career sort of disruption, I think the things you really need to think about is a clear purpose to it. So how are you going to spend the time? What are you going to use it for? What sort of time scale are you going for? So if it's part of, say, redundancy and you want to take some time out, how long for? These things have a tendency to drift otherwise. But also, what's the financial imperative? How much money you've got? How long do you need to make it last? When do you need to be earning money again?
Brilliant. Okay. And Liz, over to you.
Yeah, echoing what Gill said, really there, it's about being clear on your purpose and being comfortable with what that purpose is. So yes, it might be to learn a new skill, but equally it might be to have some downtime. You know, might need to accept that I need a rest. So it's that almost like coaching yourself and asking yourself those questions. Yeah, why am I taking this? And also, is now the right time?
Excellent. Okay, so we talked a little bit yesterday about sabbaticals and career breaks and what is the difference. So Liz, I think you were going to start on that one.
Yeah, so sabbaticals, there's a report, isn't there, around what sabbaticals are, and historically it was with university sectors. I think it was for every 7 years that you'd worked, you could take a year out and then do with that what you choose. So I think it is pedantics over language, and it depends what company you're working for and organisations, what language they choose to use. But for me, I think it is an interesting mindset one. Does sabbatical have more of a positive connotation? It's a reward for your tenure, or you deserve a break to rest, recover, recuperate, do what you want, over a career break, where some people may have more negative connotations with that and sort of questioning, well, why do you need it? So in terms of what's happening, there's no difference. It just depends on your sector, I think, and their terminology. But it's about whether you want to start the conversation by saying, I would like a sabbatical over I would like a career break, and see how does that land.
Yeah. Gill, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with it. It's about positioning, it's about phrasing, and the sabbatical one has sort of very purposeful meanings about it. But it is just that. It is just terminology. But it is about using the appropriate terminology to the environment that you're in, I think, as well, when you're trying to position it. But essentially, a sabbatical is still a career break. It's just a period of time, but you might not be breaking away from your career. You just are taking that break to do whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so what could you do if you did decide that you were going to take a career break? So Gill, do you want to start with that one?
Well, I think, first of all, it's about negotiating the career break, isn't it? And seeing what is allowable within your organisation, and also contractually, is there anything in your contract about it? Many more organisations nowadays are very much up for career breaks and allowing people to them. And the big four accountancy companies, it's not unusual for people to take a year out to do something else. But the really thing is to be very practical about it. How do you want to use the time? So even if that is just having some restorative time to recover and renew, how do you want to do that recover and renew? So that at the end of it, if you like, when this is all done and dusted and you're explaining to people, you've got a clear story to tell.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. Okay, Liz?
For anyone that works with me, they always know I throw in what's called the 5W1H model, and it's really simple questioning. So who, what, where, when, why, and how. And I think, going on what Gill said, get that clarity of purpose for yourself, but also ask as many questions of yourself as you can under those question headings. So, who's going to be involved in this career break? Who will it impact? Who else do I need to communicate? what is the career break about? Why am I taking it? So before you even approach your company, it's you having asked all those questions first, because it's likely they're going to have similar ones. So it'll help you get that clarity as part of that storytelling piece, so in a year's time, and you're sharing to people, you've got your clear story with all the reasons as to why you took it. But it'll help you sort of break down any assumptions you may have over it, and or questions that are likely to come up, and assumptions that the people who are going to interact with you as part of this career break may also have.
Yeah, I think also we talked yesterday with lots of client stories, didn't we? And I've got kind of a couple of examples of one who did have a planned career break. So he did take redundancy from his role. And he really wanted to go travelling, but he actually wanted to secure a role before he went. So he went through this whole recruitment process and managed to negotiate that he wouldn't start for 6 months, so he could go off and do his travelling to South America. So I thought that was really impressive that he was able to agree that. And I guess that all comes down to position interviews and making sure you're honest. And if they want you enough, then obviously it worked for him. So that was really good. And then I've had lots of clients that have kind of found themselves in a career break without meaning to be, particularly over the last couple of years, I guess. So, and almost all of them have turned it into something positive. So whether they've decided to do a house renovation project, I've got people that have written books and published them. So there's all sorts of stories of people that have changed that unplanned career break into something really purposeful.
And what you get from that, then, you get a story to tell, and you also learn when you're on those journeys, because people seem to think that you're only going to learn when you're at work, but you learn from any activity or experience. And what the research shows, when people come back to work after the career break, they're often more energized and more full of creativity. By creativity, I don't mean painting pictures, but just in the way they think, a bit more laterally, because they've had that downtime to restore and renew.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've had quite a few career breaks, both planned and unplanned. I've had one for relocating to Australia, relocating back from Australia to here, a deliberate career break for traveling, around the world, career break for having children. Some have been planned, some haven't. But I think that is it. Is when you re-enter the world of work, or when you're looking for work again, if it's not a planned one, it is, what are those lessons learned? What did I learn about myself? What are the skills? And completely agree with what Gill was saying. We get some of our best ideas and our most creative ideas when we rest, because we tap into parts of our brain that we don't normally when we're in our culture of busyness. So actually there are some real pros and benefits in terms of that, changing perspective, seeing things from a different slant, and coming up with those innovative ideas to bring back into the workplace.
It's really interesting that you picked the word creative, actually, because I was talking to a client yesterday doing some feedback on a psychometric, and creativity came as one of her kind of real strengths. And she was saying, but I'm not creative. And exactly what you're saying, it doesn't necessarily mean about being arty or musical or whatever it is. It is actually about coming up with those different ideas, thinking outside the box, all of that kind of stuff. So language is so important, isn't it? And to be able to relate it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. So in terms of benefits, we have touched on this a little bit, but what are the benefits of a career break? So Liz, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, again, I think it all does depend on what your purpose is. So obviously, if your intentional career break is to finish off a master's, you would hope that, yes, you would complete it and come out with your qualification at the end. And of course, there's going to be spin-offs for that when you return. You're not going to feel the pressure of trying to complete it whilst doing the job, sense of accomplishment, all those sorts of things. And I think the benefits will be very personal to you. But may also impact those around you. So I know when I went traveling, I learned so much about myself and my own resilience and being independent. I'm a real people person. I need to be with people all the time. And then I found myself in a situation where, I was 3 months traveling around Asia on my own. And before that happened, I could never imagine it. I didn't think I had that skill set to be able to cope with being on my own, but I found it. And it changed me as a person, and it's helped me going forward. So, you might not even realize at the time, you might be in the moment and think, oh yes, I'm learning something here, there's a benefit to this, but it could be years later that you're in a situation and think, gosh, if it wasn't for that, if I hadn't taken that break, if that hadn't have happened on that break, I wouldn't be in this position or where I am now. So some of it is long term, and some of it is direct impacts. And I think also with the purpose thing, there is the whole thing around, if it is for resting, then that can only be a good thing to recharge, to look after your health, to look after your mental health and well-being. So yeah, you're undoubtedly going to get the benefits from that.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say about the one for health, because I think often that means you could possibly have a sort of longer career in many respects, because you've had these breaks as you go through, and that's given people a change, because people do need a change. Perhaps they want a mini change of career, perhaps. And I've seen people who perhaps during furlough, and they were shielding, come back and obviously having used that time to think and to learn, but also to think, what is it I really want to do? Do I want to change? Is the time right for a change? So it gives you that time and space to think, breathe in, breathe out. Do I want a complete change of career? Do I just want a change of company? Or do I want to change the way I work? So I think it's that headspace. And I had somebody I know, and for various reasons, she'd had a very busy year, and that included a family bereavement, a significant family bereavement. And so after that year, she decided she'd take, I think it was 3 months, or 4 months out as a complete break. And she did exactly that. She had headspace and time to think about what she wanted to do. And she actually decided it was time for a change, and she changed the company she worked for, which meant quite a different life than the very, very long hours that she'd been working prior to that as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we didn't talk specifically about this as a question yesterday, but I guess if we're dealing quite a lot with people who have taken redundancy and maybe they are finding themselves in a career break unintentionally. So have you got any kind of advice or things that they might consider if they can't necessarily go off abroad traveling or something like that? So any ideas of what they might want to do? Liz, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think we did touch on this. So it's very much that mindset and the framing of it. So I think, again, be kind to yourself and take that pressure off. If the work isn't coming as quickly as you would like, it's being purposeful again with, okay, well, what am I going to do with this time? The more pressure you put on yourself to find the job, then you get in the rabbit wheel. You may be applying for jobs that, are not really suitable for you, but it's almost like a reactive panic mode. Whereas if you carve up your day and for example, say, okay, I'm going to treat my job search as a working day, 9 to 3 even, the rest of that time is my time, and I'm not going to feel guilty about it, and that's a good thing, and I'm going to do what I want with that time. I think it's very much around the framing and taking the pressure off.
Yeah, absolutely. Gill, anything to add?
I think definitely I've had several clients who've said that they want to come in, they want a break before they start the actual job search, but the one who perhaps managed it really successfully, he said, I want to get my CV done and all the basics that I need in place before the summer. Then I'm going to take the whole of the summer holiday off, the 6 weeks. And then what he did after that, just really as Liz said, he decided that his working hours for job search would be, I think it was something like 9 till 1 every day. And then he would have afternoons off, because he knew he probably, once he found work, he wouldn't have that time again. But what happens, things don't always happen exactly as we want them to. So I think after a while, he actually found that it's going to be a benefit to his job search if he did a course. And I think at the time it was Prince 2. He had the time to do it. So he used the time to actually do some further study, which did benefit, because it was very soon after that he found another role. So that was about somebody being very clear and very purposeful about how they use the time, and also reviewing when it didn't work out as they thought it would.
Yeah. And actually, I've got 3 clients who have written a book that they weren't necessarily planning on doing in a career break, and all of them have kind of loved that process of the creative part of writing, but then also the editing and trying to find publishers and self-publishing on Amazon. I think there's so much more work to it than you could possibly imagine. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's an idea, coming up with some kind of book idea.
And whenever I've been on my career breaks, and I know it's a whole other 1080 LinkedIn Live, but that's when I throw myself into volunteering. Well, I first started volunteering actually on a career break, and found an absolute love and passion for it. So what I learned from that actually was, even when I'm working full time, I want to carve that time to still be able to offer my time and services to volunteering, which, again, you know, if I'd not had that career break, I'd never have known that that was an important part of my life.
I would say as well, if you're on a career break, which say due to redundancy, that volunteering can be really important because it keeps you connected.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it keeps you connected with sort of, if you haven't chosen to have a career break, it keeps you connected sort of a world of work. It's a different world of work. Keeps you connected with people. It also gives you meaning and purpose when you might be struggling a bit and finding it a bit hard. And it is true that work breeds work. And if you think about that, how that will make you come across when you're actually in a job interview, full of meaning and purpose and confident because you're still doing something, that can really help.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so in terms of once you've had your break, what is the best way of then securing work once you're ready to get back into the workplace? So, Gill, do you want to start with that one?
Well, I think we always say that the best way is really to look at your network first of all. But I think before that, it's actually preparing how you're going to talk about your career break or your sabbatical, why you took it, how you used it. But also during that, if you like, that time out, to think about who do you know, who can you talk to about what you want and what you want next. And also, if you're going down some of the other routes, like you're using LinkedIn as well, perhaps having it in your profile, how you've used it as well. And then again, there's the agency sort. So, you know, if you're looking at agencies, they would definitely need a story because that's just the way they work. But I think it is being clear. So using that network and telling people what you've done and what you're looking for.
And I think if you're in a company where, you know, you're going back to your old role, there's the pre-planning part as well, isn't there? Of before you even leave, you know, thinking ahead of your plan of how you're going to interact back into that role and with your team and handovers and sort of, you know, plan all that out so it's as smooth as it can be. But like Gill said, you know, your network is absolutely your first stop, port of call if it's, you know, you're looking for a brand new role.
Yeah, and I guess as well, if you have been off traveling, I know it's slightly less likely at the moment, but if you've been away and you're coming back, I guess it's about being realistic as well, isn't it? When you come back, unless you've done all of the planning before you go, you're not going to get a job very quickly when you get back, probably, unless you've got an amazing network, as we've said. So yeah, being a little bit aware of the work you're going to need to do when you come back, I think is really important.
And factor that in, because it may be financially you need to factor that in as well when you get back. So it's time to do the traveling, but also then time to find a job when you get back, if you're not going back to your old job. But it's just thinking about that. But again, I had somebody, and I know, and she used the time out. And I think she had to go back for a little while, but during that time out, it just so happened she'd got an interview came up, and it was just one of those ones where I think it was just the one. But it was the one. And so she had to go back for a little while, I think a couple of weeks, which was probably good to say goodbye and everything else and tie everything up. And then she was off to her new job. So that did work out very well. But I think that's the anomaly.
Yeah.
I do know of somebody else who had a sabbatical and then went back for a couple of months. And I think then found a new role. And I think maybe depending on how you use that sabbatical, you know, you learn so much about yourself and do grow and do see things from a different perspective. I think dangers are onward. But then if you go back to your role, you may have almost outgrown it. So there's also that realization of, you know, a whole process again of, you know, asking what your why is, your purpose, your values, what it, you know, what it is you want out of your career. And maybe the answer is I need to move on. Not necessarily fantastic for the company. However, you know, that is a reality for some people.
Yeah. Okay, Gill, you just touched on this, but we can expand a bit more now. So how do you go about positioning these kind of career breaks on your CV and on LinkedIn? Do you want to start with that?
I think I'd have to say, with the word we've used before, it's actually with purpose. So it's clarity and purpose. What you did, what I guess that why, what you did, what the benefits were, what you learned, and if there was something that perhaps you used as a result of that, that's all fine as well. But it is there, but don't make it too long. It has to be fairly succinct. And I think the more purposeful you can make it and succinct and to the point with the benefits, the better.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And if you've got the confidence too, you could always write a little article, a longer sort of what I learned from my sabbatical and, what I'm going to throw back into the workplace as a result of it. And then if people are interested, that they can delve in and find out, the full story. But agree with Gill there, that the highlights start with and the clarity.
Yeah, good. And in terms of LinkedIn, what you could do here is in your experience sections, if you've left your previous role and there's going to be a kind of a gap showing, you could just add a new experience section where you then talk about traveling or book writing or house renovation project or whatever it is. So actively mention it on there. So and that helps in two ways. So firstly, it shows what you've been doing in that time, but also it helps LinkedIn to show that you're working, because the weird way that it works on LinkedIn, you get found more easily if you've got a current role. So this kind of tricks LinkedIn into thinking you've got a current role. So definitely worth doing that in the experience section. And then, as you say, you might have picked up new skills, so you can add all of those into the skills section on LinkedIn. You can update your profile, like you said, Liz. Maybe if you write an article, you could do that on LinkedIn. And you could also probably find other people that are doing similar things, so build up your network outside of those people that are already in your direct network. So lots that you can do on that.
There's probably a LinkedIn group, isn't there, returning from a sabbatical?
Probably, yeah, there probably is. Yeah, I'm sure there is. Okay, so if now isn't the right time, but you do want to take a career break at some point, how do you plan it? So Liz, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, so first off, you're going to have to think around where you are at in your career. Is it the right time for you right now? It might be that you're just going for a promotion. Would it be better to wait a year, for example, until you've sort of established yourself in that role? Obviously, your financial situation you have to take into consideration, especially depending on what you want to do. So we keep talking about traveling, but obviously that's going to cost you money. So what the financial situation, and also how long. There isn't any hard, fast rules on how long a sabbatical could be. Yes, we talked about the university sector where approximately it was a year for every 7, but it might be a month that ordinarily you couldn't do with your holiday plans or wouldn't be allowed, but that's signed off as part of sabbatical. It could be 3, 6, 9, 12 months. So it will very much decide on how long and all those factors as to whether now is the right time or do I postpone it because maybe I've got a new team coming in and actually I want to set them up so I can go away and relax and enjoy it even more. So yeah, lots of different things to think about.
I think that's absolutely right. It is about thinking it through. So much as it's rather than it being a whim, might be very tempting some days. We'll all feel like we need a career break at the end of some days, but it is actually projecting into the future. So it's thinking about all those things that Liz has mentioned about timing, but also to start thinking about the return as well. So we talked about that gap, if you're coming back to a different job or you've got to find one, but also what might be different when you get back? How will you readjust? How will you settle back in? Because even just being away, traveling for a month can actually be quite difficult to settle back, let alone if you've been away or doing something else like writing books or doing some research. Because I've taken a break before and I've actually used it to do some research and write a report. So even that's quite different, but you do need to think ahead. And I guess to avoid taking a very fly approach to it.
Yeah.
Sell and pitch to your company as well, isn't it? So really getting that clarity so that when you have the conversation, say, look, and I've thought this through and the best time to do this for me, but also for you is, and almost do that coaching, selling back to the company.
Yeah, and quite a lot of the reading I've done on this is talking about how you position this career break as well, because it could be that you might be authorised it, but someone else might not be authorised it. So it's really important that you're quite I don't know, purposeful, I guess, I suppose, in what are the benefits going to be? Why should I get this? What's it going to bring to the company? Being conscious of other people. Okay, so interview. So have you got any tips about talking about career breaks at interview? So Gill, do you want to start with that one?
Well, I guess the first question is, are you going to call it a career break or a sabbatical?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's to think about. Again, you could actually use a career break. I don't think people really mind. Obviously, if you're in academia, use the word sabbatical. That will go down well, or in any educational setting. But I think it's why you took it, what you did with the time, what you learned from it, what you enjoyed from it, and what is brought to your role now. And I think really it's just having that. I'm a clear believer in these stories to tell, succinct stories. They might come back whether, are you likely to take another one? Because if they're feeling particularly, grumpy, they might want to. They might want to be sure that you're not going to tip off to Australia for another 6 months or something. So be clear. There might be some of those questions. Well, are you likely to take another one then? And have your answer ready.
Yeah, Liz.
And I know with my various career breaks, I've always, on reflection, found it quite interesting that the companies who, I think, again, their framing and positioning, the companies have asked me questions about it, but almost in a leading, quite accusational, well, what is this career break about, has not been the right company for me to work for. Those who've asked in an inquisitive way that's led to a genuine conversation about, oh, and you went traveling here, what happened to me, and those connections that were made were the right cultural fit where I ended up getting a job. So I think when you're talking about it, you be honest with yourself as well. What's the feeling you're getting back? Is this because they see career breaks as a positive because you'll have learned about yourself and built skills and resilience and all those sort of things, or do they just see it as a hindrance and it's likely to give you a good indication of the culture?
Yeah, so I guess as part of your preparation for the interview, you need to be thinking about how, as you said, how the interviewer is going to be framing this. So it could be, why did you take so long to find a new job? Could be one way of asking it, whereas other people might say, what have you done in your time? So yeah, it's like you say, that might not be the right company that you're going to be working for, but you still need to answer the question while you're there, I guess. So trying to think from, if you are asked in quite a negative way, trying to turn that around to show what it is you've done and learned.
Yeah, and how you've taken advantage of your opportunities is the way I'd look at it. Because there's, sometimes these things are forced upon us, but there's a lovely Helen Keller quote: when one door shuts, another one opens, but we're often staring so long at the one which is shut, we fail to see the one which is opened. And so if you do have an enforced career break, is where's the open door? Because, and that's how you can actually look for that opportunity. Because I would never have done a piece of research I did about women's careers if I hadn't had a bit of a break, because it needed the break to do it, because it took quite a lot of work. Yeah, so it is looking for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so have you got any other stories you want to tell about any clients you've had or anything like that? So, Gill, any others?
Well, I've got one actually, and he actually did phrase it as a sabbatical. Been working all his life. He was in his 50s, financial director. And so definitely took some very clearly defined time off, really, just after all that lengthy period of working. Found it quite difficult to find a new role. It wasn't, a walk-in. So eventually got a 3-day-a-week interim role that was an hour and a half's drive away. He took the role, looked interesting, looked right, he could do it. Now that 3-day-a-week interim role in a company that was looking to, merge or be acquired, he'd had previous experience which didn't come up in his interview. So when the owner found that out, his role became 5 days a week and permanent. So he really did benefit. He got the time off, and then he was prepared to be flexible enough to take something 3 days a week, perhaps wasn't his ideal, perhaps a bit further away than he wanted. But just look how it turned out. And that's where he eventually retired from. They did find a buyer for the company eventually, and so it worked out really well. So again, it's where was the open door?
And I had a coach who was working for a bank and wanted to go on sabbatical to travel, And I think what I learned from the coaching process with her is actually also don't underestimate how long that process can take. So if you're thinking about doing your sabbatical, don't think you're going to be able to have the conversation with your employer and then off you go the following month. You know, often these can take 6, 9, 12 months of conversations and sign off, preparation and planning for it to be the right time for you, but also for the company, because when that matches, that's when it gets signed off. So if you're prepared to have a bit of flexibility, which she was, because it was a big transformational change piece, new team, she got it all set up, and then happy days, and off she went and thoroughly relaxed and enjoyed it. So I think, yeah, in terms of stories to share from my experience personally, but also with coachees, is it's not necessarily a quick process. And if it is, because that's what you want to do, it could be that you resign to do it as opposed to have it as a sabbatical.
Yeah. Okay, so we are at top tip to leave with. So Gill, what's your top tip for people today?
I think really mine is about purpose. Be purposeful with what you do. Be purposeful with planning it and why you want to do it. Then be purposeful in your story that you tell afterwards.
Okay, Liz?
And for me, take the pressure off when you are on your sabbatical and be kind to yourself. You have your reasons, so stay true to what those reasons are. So yeah, be kind to yourself and enjoy it.
Excellent, thank you. So thank you very much. Thank you to people watching. As always, if you do have any questions or comments afterwards, please feel free to add them in. And next week, I think I'm going to be talking about the change curve with Alison and guest Mandy. So that's going to be really interesting if we're able to finalise that. So we'll be talking about the change curve in terms of theory and also about kind of real life feelings on going through that when you're on the job hunting process. So that should be an interesting conversation. So thanks again. Thank you, Gill. Thank you, Liz, and see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.